This week on Arizona Illustrated, a glance back at Aldo Leopold.
Wherever he went, he was observing, and he began to learn what I'm seeing is more important than what I've been told.
Humanitarian Scott Warren, in his own words.
Be careful what you infer from what you read from the landscape itself, because the landscape also contains power and it conceals as much as it reveals.
Chef Martín Fontes on 4th Avenue.
I took all these Mexican recipes and I tweaked them to the healthier side. So instead of adding more salt to the food, I would add more garlic and spices to make it taste better.
And A Mountain Memories.
I was always here as a kid. We used to always come up here and just eat food and just hang out.
Welcome to Arizona Illustrated. I'm Tom McNamara. Conservationist, writer, and philosopher Aldo Leopold, considered by many to be the father of wildlife ecology, is the author of The Land Ethic, an essay which calls for an ethical and caring relationship between people and nature. And this story is inspired by his essay, Thinking Like a Mountain.
Looking through Aldo Leopold's archives, I came across these burned items. It turns out they were the contents of Leopold's pockets when he died. He was fighting a fire on his property and suffered a fatal heart attack. Leopold is best known for his book, A Sand County Almanac. It was published in 1949, shortly after his death. He also proposed the first wilderness area in the country. It was clear to him that wild places were becoming endangered by human activity and should be set aside. Some call him the father of wildlife ecology, but long before that, Leopold was a forest assistant at the Apache National Forest in the Arizona Territory. This was Leopold's first job. He was stationed in Springerville, and Arizona wouldn't become a state for another few years.
I'd learned about him in college, and in fact, I still have my original Leopold Sand County Almanac. I love a lot of the essays in Sand County Almanac. I think the one that's probably the deepest for me is The Land Ethic. And in this, he talks about humans' relationship with the wild environment, and how he sees, at least, we are in the middle of a transformation. We go from feeling that we control environment, that we own environment, to the point where we say, no, we are part of the land. We are part of the environment. And that is a radical transformation, because the difference between owning and controlling something and being a part of something is huge. And that's what he really started with this book in particular. His time here colored the way he viewed things. It stayed with him forever.
Every living thing, and perhaps many a dead one as well, pays heed to that call. To the deer it is a reminder of the way of all flesh. To the pine, a forecast of midnight scuffles and of blood upon the snow. To the coyote, a promise of gleanings to come. To the cowman, a thread of red ink at the bank. To the hunter, a challenge of fang against bullet. Yet behind these obvious and immediate hopes and fears, there lies a deeper meaning, known only to the mountain itself. Only the mountain has lived long enough to listen objectively to the howl of a wolf.
Leopold wrote this in his essay, Thinking Like a Mountain. Later in the essay, Leopold wrote,
We were eating lunch on a high rim rock, at the foot of which a turbulent river elbowed its way. What was literally a pile of wolves writhed and tumbled in the center of an open flat at the foot of our rimrock. In those days, we had never heard of passing up a chance to kill a wolf. In a second, we were pumping lead into the pack. We reached the old wolf in time to watch a fierce green fire dying in her eyes. I realized then, and have known ever since, that there was something new to me in those eyes, something known only to her and to the mountain. I was young then, and full of trigger itch. I thought that because fewer wolves meant more deer, that no wolves would mean hunter's paradise. Since then, I have lived to see state after state extirpate its wolves. I have watched the face of many a newly wolfless mountain. Such a mountain looks as if someone had given God a new pruning shears and forbidden him all other exercise. The cowman who cleans his range of wolves does not realize that he is taking over the wolf's job of trimming the herd to fit the range. He has not learned to think like the mountain. Hence we have dust bowls and rivers washing the future into the sea.
Leopold argued that there is a community of life to which humans belong, and that we are not intended to dominate that community. In his essay Land Ethic, he writes,
"A thing is right when it tends to preserve the integrity, stability, and beauty of the biotic community. It is wrong when it tends otherwise."
In his essay Escudia, Leopold tells the story of the killing of the last grizzly bear in Arizona. There are still no grizzly bears here, but the wolves are finally back. At the end of his essay, Thinking Like a Mountain, Leopold writes,
"We all strive for safety, prosperity, comfort, long life, and dullness. The deer strives with his supple legs, the cowman with trap and poison, the statesman with pen, the most of us with machines, votes, and dollars. But it all comes to the same thing: peace in our time. A measure of success in this is all well enough, and perhaps is a requisite to objective thinking. But too much safety seems to yield only danger in the long run. Perhaps this is behind Thoreau's dictum, 'In wilderness is the salvation of the world.' Perhaps this is the hidden meaning in the howl of the wolf, long known among mountains, but seldom perceived among men."
You can find out more about Aldo Leopold and a Sand County Almanac at aldoleopold.org. Scott Warren is a humanitarian aid volunteer working to end migrant death and suffering in the Sonoran Desert. Following federal criminal charges for harboring and conspiracy to harbor in January 2018, he was brought to trial in June 2019, resulting in a hung jury. We attended Scott Warren's presentation of Reading the Landscape at the Jewish History Museum in September.
As many of you know, I was arrested in January of 2018 in Ajo, which is where I live. There I'm a volunteer with a number of humanitarian aid organizations, and many of those folks who do that work are in the audience today. I'm just one of many. I was arrested for, in the words of the official Border Patrol complaint against me, giving food, water, clean clothes, and beds to two men, Jose and Christian, from Central America. and I was charged with the crime of harboring.
Border activist Scott Warren walked out of an Arizona courthouse on Tuesday after a jury failed to reach a verdict in his case. The human rights activist and geography professor was accused of transporting and hiding undocumented migrants.
So we've had a trial in which the jury was hung, the judge declared a mistrial, and the government will try me again in November. We're not here to talk in details about the legal case, so if you want to leave, you can leave. It is very interesting, on a personal note, giving talks on these topics where before maybe a handful of people would show up, and then suddenly this interesting experience of being in the news, which is very new and exciting and uncomfortable, and lots of people show up. So landscape itself is thought of as an open book. You can go out and you can read the landscape in the same way that you can read a book. You can get information from it. You can come to understand it. But be careful what you infer from what you read from the landscape itself. Because the landscape, it also contains power, and it conceals as much as it reveals. So I think in the example of where I live, Ajo itself, and if you go to Ajo, you drive to Ajo, and you get to the middle of town, and there's a very beautiful plaza there. And if you go there and you start looking at that plaza, you can learn a lot about the town, and you can make a lot of inferences about the town and about the kind of place that it is by that landscape. The thing is, that plaza was built in about 1919 by an Anglo mining company headed up by John Greenway, built by an architecture firm from Maine that very much wanted to create a town in the middle of the desert to evoke a sense of place that did in fact not exist. And they built it in this new company town. And when they did that, they essentially completely destroyed the old town of Ajo, which was an Ottoman Mexican settlement that was very old. And they moved everybody into this new town with its plaza. And the town was deeply segregated. And the plaza was in a part of town called American Town, and there were separate districts called Mexican Town and Indian Village. And that plaza itself was segregated. You could not be in it if you were non-white. And the town was built in that way for the purpose of mining, for business, for the extraction of resources. And that sort of orderly separation of the races and the creation of a hierarchy of race was seen by the company as being necessary to produce the commodity, in that case, copper. So when you go to a place like Ajo, the landscape is both an open book that can be read and you can learn things from it, you can look at it, but it also conceals as much as it reveals because it was built by somebody, it was authored by somebody, and it reflects power and those power relations. And we could no doubt do that with any kind of landscape that we see in the border region. And you go to places like Organ Pipe and Cabeza Prieta National Wildlife Refuge and other conservation areas, places that we often think of as not being impacted by humans, but they are still very much authored. Right now, we are facing the construction of a 30-foot high border wall across much of the desert of Organ Pipe and Cabeza Prieta, south of Ajo. And I had a sense of nostalgia for the old border wall, which is funny and it's really troubling at the same time. The vehicle barrier, the Normandy fence, the old 12-foot pedestrian fence, the new 30-foot fence is going to have 24-hour lighting and sensors and all this kind of stuff. And I had this sense of like nostalgia when you saw those pictures in the news of the new 30-foot high panels going up. And so each time we sort of up the intensity of the enforcement landscape in the border region, we sort of normalize that landscape and we normalize the social relations that it represents. So we normalize going through checkpoints. We normalize the scrutiny that we get. That becomes as much of a part of the landscape as the Ajo Plaza does. And oftentimes we forget what's really underpinning that and the social relations that it's reflecting and creating as well. I bring these things up because it's just an opportunity for me to share my perspective and the kinds of things that guide me in the ways that I live here in this place, the ways that I explore the landscape, think about this place and the history of migration, and the ways that migration is both a central part of shaping this place and is also in turn shaped and changed by how our place looks and how it feels as well.
It can be seen for miles around. Sentinel Peak, more commonly known as A Mountain, a point of regional pride. But more than a landmark with a beautiful view, it's become a special place for many to remember.
We were driving and she's like, look at mommy, the A, there's a big giant A.
It was this big. This big.
Pretty big.
It's big.
What do you want to do? You want to go up there?
All the way. To the top.
Up to the top.
Higher than Tucson.
Yep. My dad used to bring our whole cross-country team up here. He'd drop us off at the bottom and then we'd have to run up. And then this was kind of like our gift at the end. We got to go up there and climb to the top. It draws you to it, you know? You can't help but want to climb it when you're here.
I was always here as a kid with the family. We used to always come up here and just eat food actually and just hang out.
ASU students came and like painted it and stuff, and there was like this whole big fuss over the A right there, so I had to come and see for myself, but now I just like the view of the city. This is someplace I would come not to reflect on a day, but to more like forget about the day.
I got good memories and then I got bad memories too. I brought my son up here right after school so we can have some fun. You know, we were grooving to some music. We had 50 Cent, we had Tyga, we had just some feeling music to enjoy the night that we're in. My son right now, I'm with him right now. I'm building a great memory.
I like the sunset and all the buildings and the lights. It's just really nice to look at.
I stayed at that motel on the second floor and stood on the balcony to watch the fireworks from over here. And it's hard for me to recognize because a lot of things have happened in 25 years. I remember empty fields. Now there are buildings down there.
I've lived here for many, many years. I usually bring friends who are visiting from out of town because it's the one place where they can see the whole scope of Tucson.
Traveling south to like Kentucky, Tennessee, things like that, you know, you get in the foothills before you get in the mountains, and here everything is flat, and then pow, there's a mountain right in your face.
Oh, it's beautiful. I mean, Michigan's all flat. We don't have mountains, so it's definitely a breathtaking view.
The views get more and more spectacular as you get higher and higher. It's like a hot air balloon ride without the hot air balloon.
I usually go to the hut that's over there. I just like to sit and escape school.
Just one time, we had come up here around 8 o'clock. Sun was still going down. It was just so nice. Clouds were looking white, yellow, maroon, and you could definitely take a picture that day, post it somewhere online. If they weren't from Tucson, they were definitely talking about the sunset. Oh, it's full of Tucson pride. You see A Mound, you know it's Tucson.
Well, my grandson's visiting from the East Coast.
Yep, and I just was thinking of a nice place that we could go before I brought Nana out to dinner. And Nana has lived here for, what, 15 years now? About 15 years, and she had never been up here, so I thought,
No.
why not?
So here we are. Gorgeous, gorgeous sunset.
One of the many reasons Tucson was named the United Nations World City of Gastronomy is because of the wide variety of delicious and diverse culinary establishments serving up regional cuisine. Places like Martín's on 4th Avenue near downtown, where you can savor a healthy and delectable array of Mexican food creations from Chef Martín Fontes.
This is a job that everybody has done for their grandmother at their kitchen table. Nobody gets away without doing this at one point or another. She would be very, very strict about it. Like that would not pass my grandmother's inspection, something that's broken like that. These are the Mayacoba beans that come from Guasave, Sinaloa. I just came back and brought 300 kilos of them. Most of my cousins there are planters and they grow these. I think it's a labor of love. I use it as like a form of meditation. It gives me a moment to think about what else I need to do. It's not like opening up a can. I take a lot of pride in these beans. They come from my family's farms. We're at Martín's Comida Chingona at 555 North 4th Avenue. I'm going on my 18th year. On May 9th is when I open. I'm making a tomatillo pozole. Vegetarian, it's gonna be amazing. I dreamt up this recipe on the way up from Sinaloa on my trip for Christmas, and I'm gonna try it, see how it goes. I took care of my mother, and I got a job at the oldest Mexican restaurant downtown. And I noticed that I never clock watched when I was at work, even though I spent 10 hours or 12 hours. And I really enjoyed it. Not only does it make me tired and physical, it's also very social. And I just like playing with food. As a child, it was always like the center of the household, the kitchen. I grew up in Mexicali, Baja California. When I graduated from my Catholic school, I went to Nogales High School. I lived with my grandmother at the time. I finished school and I came up to go to school here at the U of A. Have a nice day. Happy New Year to you, sir. I'm not a very fancy chopper. When you're eating my rice, you're gonna get a little chunk of onion and go, ooh. So you can distinguish the flavors of each thing in each dish. Separately, we do the soup for the rice, and then we do the toasting of the rice. I'm gonna put the garlic in here and toast the garlic to give the oil flavor. And then we're gonna put the rice. You add it a little bit at a time so it toasts nice and evenly. And we put them together. It's 5 minutes of cooking, boiling, and then turn off the heat, and 20 minutes of just sitting, and you got perfect rice. I was the youngest of all my brothers, and my mother had progressed diabetes. I took all these Mexican recipes because she used to cook for us a lot, and I kind of tweaked them to the healthier side. So instead of adding more salt to the food, I would add more garlic and spices to make it taste better. And I would add nopalitos to her food. They have all kinds of benefit. It's a green vegetable, and it tends to control your blood sugar very well. which is really important even if you don't suffer from diabetes. I brought her home with me and I took care of her at home. According to her doctor, a nephrologist, I extended her life by about 3 years, easily, or 4, just by keeping track of her diet. I would make these beautiful recipes and just make them healthy. So when I came to open the restaurant, I decided not to have a deep fryer. I decided not to even have a freezer here. So everything that comes in is freshly cooked as needed. When the health department comes, they go, where's your frozen food? Where's your raw food? There is no such thing, because when I need to make the chicken mole, as soon as I get the chicken, we cook it all into mole. These are the mayocoba beans. I just put a little bit of corn oil and a pinch of sea salt. This is the final bean. We greet you with a little bit of beans over your chips. Señoritas. I like to think I can feed everybody here, whether you have some kind of dietary restriction or some kind of illness. Cool, I'll be back. Pretty much all our food, except for the meats and the cheese and the eggs, are vegan. It's easy to do. A lot of people have opened restaurants recently, and I do things a little differently that sometimes they may not understand. Why I don't have sour cream or deep fried chimichangas, and they honestly don't think I'm Mexican, but it's really strange. ¿Quieres caramelo? ¿No quieres tacos? I'm trying to make myself known again. I used to think word of mouth was really important, and it did work for me for 10, 15 years. But now I'm really trying to work a little more of my media, my Instagram, my Facebook. People really look up things on the internet and they believe what's on there, whether it's true or not. You have to go after the money now. It's not walking in the door. I think food has a very important part in life, is to balance your blood. It's supposed to make you feel better after you eat, not make you feel clumsy or heavy. It is designed to make you feel better, not make you feel worse.
Thank you for joining us here on Arizona Illustrated. I'm Tom McNamara. See you next week.